be a fabulous event tomorrow for the UK Financial Crime Leaders Summit.
Bang for buck, this is the best event that we attend all year.
So for me, today's event exceeded all expectations, and I've been really, really impressed by the calibre of speakers.
Welcome to Jake Moore. So this is part of the Financial Crime and Compliance Unfiltered podcast series, because Jake, we're welcoming you on the 8th of October to the Fraud and Scams event in London, which is a totally sold out event. So we're going to have a great day in London, loads of brilliant content around fraud, scams and cybercrime as well. And obviously welcome to Oonagh. We've just got back from Germany late last night, but looking both refreshed and ready to go. So I think if we could kick off, Jake, with a focus on your professional background and your core focus with ESET, obviously at the moment as Global Security Advisor, and perhaps how you ended up getting into the role where you are now. If you could give us a bit of background, that would be brilliant.
Sure. Well, yeah, thanks for having me on and looking forward to the event. And the reason I can't wait to speak there is because I've loved crime all of my life. In fact, that's the reason I started in the police force out of university, because I had this fascination with crime. And I thought that would be a great way of learning about crime without actually having to commit any offences and end up in jail. So I spent 14 years in the police force. And the last 2 years, I was in the cybercrime team. I spent a long time in the high-tech crime unit looking at forensics, but then I really wanted to go into the future of cybercrime. This is at a time when it was growing massively, and we really started to see a shift from, say, normal, say, physical crime into cybercrime. And then around 7 years ago, I joined a huge cybersecurity company. And this is where I get to do a lot more testing. So being a bit more proactive and being preventative, trying to showcase to people how I could potentially break into their business, and then showing them how they should maybe patch those vulnerabilities, those areas. A lot of the time, that's just changing people's mindset. And so, yeah, if you're talking about my main focus now, I would say a lot of that is on awareness, but that's built in a variety of different ways. With my research, of course, naturally goes into awareness for, say, the wider public and businesses of all sizes, but mainly small and medium-sized businesses I tend to focus on, and showing them with the latest technology how I might be able to just maybe steal something, obviously with their permission, or just to show them that I could get in. And if I can, then of course the cyber criminals can as well.
So you haven't, Jake, moved on from the police force to becoming a white hat hacker? You're actually doing the hacking with their permission.
Yeah, I mean, you've always got to get their permission. Obviously, otherwise you then break the law. But it's always a good way of getting their involvement. It's always a safe environment. And people tend to like it, as long as you don't pick on people, say, who aren't going to be aware of it within the business. Yeah. I have done that before, and that doesn't always go down well. But no, it's great to get people talking about it. And that comes back to the awareness. It's not to point fingers at people for, say, clicking on a phishing link for any reason. Yeah. It's about talking about it, because that builds in people's confidence in themselves to stay protected.
Wasn't there a case a couple of years ago where there was a white hat hacker that hacked into a very large entity? I can't remember the specifics, but then he actually said to them, I'm not going to ask you for ransom. I'm going to ask you to pay me to fix your problem. And I thought, that's the best business model I've ever heard. and they did. They brought him on as an advisor.
That is a very gutsy move. I wouldn't advise that, because if it does go the other way, if they'd said no, he would have been committing an offence. Of the Computer Crime Act. So yeah, not really a great way of doing it. I may prefer going down the whole marketing and advertising route myself.
So stick to that.
Fair enough. Yeah. That's really interesting. Obviously, giving it we've got the bit of the background now. And what do you see in terms of the biggest shift right now over the last 12, 24 months, and I guess looking forward in the whole global cyber threat landscape, or shifts maybe?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm old enough to remember the World Wide Web coming out in the 90s. and really taking
Jake,
and
we all are.
Yeah.
Okay.
and
didn't know.
the dial-up noise of the internet.
Yeah, that's it.
Exactly.
But that was the shift I felt back then of where we were going to go with technology. People started to worry about jobs changing and what the future would look like. Would we all sit behind screens? And some of those things came true, and some were just a bit, say, a bit of an exaggeration. But what we're seeing now is another big shift, and of course that's AI. And I love AI so much. Of course, it also scares people, but naturally, it's being used by criminals as well. Of course, it is. If criminals are using AI, then they are able to take advantage of it with their criminal minds without regulation. They don't have to buy the off-the-shelf products that I have to, say, toy around with usually. They are able to make their own bespoke ones, change them, and that's what we're seeing, such a big shift in the last, say, 24 months.
Did you happen to see the research paper published by the University of Amsterdam this week on AI? It's a very interesting reading.
I haven't seen that yet.
You really need to read it because what it showed was with the back end programming of the AI systems, and this was of course going to happen. What happened was that the AI bots separated into actually teams, which they then basically put one bot as the leader of the team. And then they had to go in to look at the unintended bias within the system and the hierarchical bias that we naturally have within humanity and within society. And it was so interesting to see this. And what had happened was a lot of the ChatGPT models, etc., when they're built for social media purpose, etc., they are built to create noise and to create to spark debate.
Yeah, traction.
And that was happening within as they were building these completely unbiased, neutral AI functionalities. They actually were starting to build into themselves this kind of social media challenge. And it's very, very interesting reading.
Yeah, they learn from what they see online. And the biggest, say, pulls into a social media post is traction, it's argument, debate of, say, far one end to far another end. It has to have that argumentative streak to make it blow up. And so it clearly would easily work that out, that this is maybe the ingredients that create something that goes quite large. And that's what they're so good at doing, because at the fundamental, say, heart of what AI is, it's still machine learning. So it's just learning from the data that we've given it.
Absolutely. I'm really excited about the whole digital twin era that's coming through at the moment. And this is something we've heard Swift and other providers in the market talking about, where you're creating, it takes about 9 months in essence to train it, but you create a digital twin of yourself that can actually take care of everything else while you're sleeping. And I thought to myself, this sounds incredible.
Yeah, but I mean, I've already started doing this.
Yeah, me also. But then I also thought we don't need 2 Oonahs in the world. One is enough, and the other one could go crazy on social media.
Pretty much.
But I think that this digital twin aspect is just phenomenal, and it's something that we should all be investing in at the moment. To again, going back to the efficiencies and effectiveness that the different AI models can bring. And in terms of identification, this is a model of you with your mindset and understanding, working 24 hours a day, and then being able to pull out things that you would naturally identify, and then you can focus on those specific risks. So basically reducing your workload, but allowing you to focus where the real risks are. And I just, for me, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. That's the future right there.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. So, I mean, we've talked about AI. Maybe I'll just jump to the whole technology side in terms of AI tools obviously becoming more sophisticated and so on. But how do you see that being used then by the attackers, let's say, in the next years, or equally by people who are trying to prevent, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing AI on both sides here. So with our software, for example, we've been using machine learning for, say, 2 decades, AI for the past 3 or 4 years, where it's fighting newer types of threats, which of course are also using AI. So it becomes this like fire fighting fire. So AI fighting AI. And that's where it's just going to increase. You do still, of course, need human eyes to look over those say, anomalies and able to pick out what might be something to go after, what might not be, so on a larger scale, but bring it down to, say, the individual scale, especially when it comes to, say, financial crime, where it's a directed attack on someone specific. That's where they need to be understanding what is possible. And with this, it's the awareness piece again, knowing that you can be cloned, knowing that your voice can be cloned or a video could be cloned. This could be AI, for example, very easy to go and do. That's what people need to be aware of. Should it target them? And then take that, say, understanding and be able to block whatever it is requesting. So should it be asking for personal information or financial information, knowing that it's okay to say no to it, because that still could also be a scam. So it's just going to get bigger and stronger, but hopefully at the same time, we could also increase that education as well.
That's actually a really good point, Jake. Jane, we don't even need to pre-record these sessions. We could just create deep fakes of each of us. Just run
I've done
those
that.
sessions. Yeah. And that actually brings us on to one of the questions on the list about the biggest threat.
Yeah.
I continually hear that deep fakes and CEO fraud and it's the biggest cybersecurity fraud that we're facing at the moment. We saw the instance in Hong Kong there about 2 years ago with the 2-week in the job CFO in a video meeting that consisted of 6 people, including the CEO and other senior leaders, transferred out something like $16 million on the back of that call, only to discover that they were the CFO was the only real person in that meeting. And that really hit home the severity and the challenge and also the insecurities it can bring to people in organizations. Like, is this, we all believe that we're talking to each other and we're the real individual, but 2 deep fakes, what do you think is the biggest cybersecurity threat that facing organizations today?
So the deepfake one is quite an exciting threat. It's very visual. It makes people really think.
Yeah.
But actually, I think it's a tool to make people think about cybersecurity as a whole.
Yeah.
I don't really think that a deepfake video call is going to be the next biggest threat, because we tend not to do anything else other than just chatting when it comes to, say, Zoom and Teams calls. We're not going to be giving away the, say, sensitive IP of a company through a call like this. However,
Well, you hope not.
well, yeah, I mean, it has happened, but that I haven't seen one since then of that size.
Yeah.
But also, I think it just brings home the fact that people are very trusting. That can be in any forum. So that specific occasion, what really happened there was they did use a deepfake, but only for about 30 seconds before they said, oh, the connection's terrible, I'm going to switch it over to audio. Audio is, I think, more powerful because you can't see their face. You can't see any synchronization issues. And you can hear just a voice that, even if it sounds quite different, it's going to sound different on a phone anyway. Some people will say that their voice is, say, slightly different through a phone than, say, if it was face to face. But what it does raise is that awareness on trust. So phishing emails actually still is the biggest threat to any company. About 80% of attacks still start with phishing emails. But that, say, vector is slightly moving towards voice calls, video calls, but only to, say, a certain degree, because we still see people fall for stuff because they believe it. So by making sure people block wherever they can and do that, say, extra verification, that's so important, because if people miss on those, then they're going to, say, lose lots of money. But if the deepfake angle is going to make people aware of it, I'm all for that, because it really brings to life how impressive this tech really is.
Are you seeing cultural variations in this as well? And the reason I ask was actually an interesting discussion I was having yesterday. We've been looking at pig butchering scams and romance scams, obviously coming out of Southeast Asia. And then we were talking about, where we've seen different movements of people in terms of scams and threats. And one person said that a number of Thai people had been moved to Dubai to a call center to basically run a scam out of the UAE. And I said to them, like, that's quite interesting. Why would they do that? Why wouldn't they do that in Thailand? And it was obviously do with, oversight, etc. But what they said was that the reason they used Thai people was that Thai people speaking to Thai people are more likely to give them money because they'll give it up freely. And it
Yeah.
made me start to think about the cultural variations and back to the Hong Kong case. If your superior in Japan or in Hong Kong would say, having lived in Asia for 12 years, I'm very aware of this. And if your superior says, do this, you automatically will do that.
Yeah, the
Without
hierarchy.
actually even asking the further questions that you referred to, and verification. And I think that's a big learning curve as well for us culturally.
So it's not just culture. This is all about the power of influence. You get the same power shift in the whole military, in the police. Anyone who's higher ranked, if they say something, people below have to do it. But it's also seen in, say, social situations culturally in different parts of the world. But if you bring it back to, say, the UK, it's known that people in the UK like speaking to call centers that are equally in the UK. And you're probably going to find that sort of dynamic in all parts of the world. You may also find a shift where regulations are, say, more lax. We're trying to see regulations more in the UK now. It's not going very well. They're trying to bring in this whole AI regulation. It's always going to be a few years out of date. But then you've got the other extreme, maybe China, North Korea, where they're more stringent with what they are doing and how, say, much control they allow people of their countries to have. So you can kind of see why these criminals are choosing, say, different parts. Very similar to the finance world. We all know why people like to have a bank account in Monaco. It's the same kind of thing with crime. They'll follow where there's the best chance of making their money. But it's not always about money. I have to stress that it might also be different motivations there, which might be espionage or just to get in to see how a company works. Nation state, for example, not always about the cash, but the majority of criminals will always be motivated financially.
Well, since you mentioned Monaco, and obviously then that kind of brings us to Formula One and AI. And don't worry, there's a reason I'm going to lead in here. What we've actually seen recently is a campaign spearheaded by an ex-Formula One driver, basically pushing back on AI regulation within Europe. And saying, we're trying to regulate too soon, too early in a space that we don't fully yet understand, which is going to impede our ability to keep on shore engineers and talent, and potentially severely and detrimentally damage our ability to develop AI within Europe. And then as a result, we will have other countries externally who will be much more advanced from AI capabilities than we have been able to do. So I wanted to get your view on that, because there's a lot of pushback at the moment. So you see, Monaco, F1, AI.
I love it.
I like the link.
Thank you.
And you're absolutely right. So there's this whole argument, yes, that AI stifles innovation, and AI regulation stifles regulation. And I do agree with that in a way, but if you just say silo one country into regulations of at that level, you're absolutely right with your example. The rest of the world, other regions will just boom in those areas. And yes, we need to be understanding how AI can change and shift these patterns or potentially take people's jobs. And therefore we have to have some sort of boundaries. But when we live in a world where we're not really governed by countries anymore, because the internet has become the world as a whole, we have to realize that competition is going to be using those tools that are available to them. And my God, they are absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And if we just take our foot off the gas for, say, a year, then they're going to be well ahead, and maybe even, to your point, overlapping us.
Because actually, Jane, yesterday you and I had this discussion with Owen, who's the head of compliance at MoonPay. And we were actually talking about that very same issue. We need to operate within a realm of regulation, and criminals or illicit actors are not bound by those same constraints. And they have, as exactly what you've said earlier, Jake, they have access to the same tools and the same capabilities and the same knowledge and intelligence that we have, unfortunately. And that kind of being bound by regulation, stifling, I'm maybe not saying, but limiting the speed of innovation, always will put us on the back foot. And the truth is, we will always be 2 steps behind, because the speed of evolution of financial crime, even over the past few years, I've not seen anything like it in my lifetime. And I've been doing, this job over 20 plus years. the character, and some of it isn't even complicated. It's gone back down to simplicity. As you said, you kind of, you get the emails where you click on the link. On the other side, like for example, Money Mule accounts, criminals don't even need to open bank accounts nowadays. They literally just bring in people who have bank accounts within banks they want to use. And it's so simplistic. But and I did make the expression, it's actually beautifully orchestrated, because it's like, I didn't need to be a criminal mastermind. I just had to think, well, what is it that I need? And what is the carrot that I need to dangle in order to get access to these facilities? And then you have, teenagers, young adults, people in financially compromised positions, vulnerable people who have now become inadvertently money launderers, or left themselves open to cyber attacks and accessing their bank accounts. Yesterday, I was having a chat with Dr. Nicola Harding, who is a criminologist. And she was talking about working with one of the online banks in the UK. And they use facial recognition in order to access the bank account. And if you're a premium customer, you can also link your other bank accounts to the same. And it's actually a pull factor. So you can pull money from your other bank accounts into this account. And if somebody has seen you type in your password on your phone in the street, steals your phone, then bypasses your facial recognition on your phone by changing it because they know your password, and then they log into your online banking account, they could actually take all your money from all of these pool bank accounts before you've even realized or reported your phone stolen. And I was just... Because I said to her, why are you wearing this big chain around your neck with your phone? And she said, in case somebody tries to snatch my phone. And then I was like, oh, well, wouldn't it be worse if they're on a motorbike and you've got this chain and you're going with it? So anyway, that was the whole discussion. But it was so interesting about the pull factor and about how easily people's security, cybersecurity on their devices could be compromised so simply. And one of the other points she made was, people mostly use the same PIN code for their phone that they also would use for their online banking in as opposed to facial recognition, which I just found shocking. But then I've been in risk management for 20 years. So are you seeing, is that some of the education you're having to give?
Yeah, it is shifting so much and so quickly with criminals, but people still use the same things. People can't remember everything, and they struggle with password managers, which is a real frustration. That's a lot of, the awareness part is to make them realize that password managers are fantastic, and they can generate these random codes and passwords for you, and they then don't have to remember them. But people like to stick with numbers that they know, and unfortunately, banking apps aren't great. They often don't let you paste in there. So if you've copied it from a password manager, they might not be able to paste in. And I would only choose a bank which is extremely secure. So in fact, I've tested what you just said, really, with changing the face on your facial recognition on your phone. Now, all the good banks, I've tested a lot of them, the good banks, not only the traditional banks, they will know if the Face ID has been changed on the device. So if your phone is stolen and the criminal knows your code to get into your phone, and they then go and remove your face and put their face on, the good apps out there, you have to go and find out which ones. I'm not going to start advertising them. The good ones will then know that's happened and need way more information to get into them. And therefore, if they steal your phone, hopefully they shouldn't be able to do it. But the best thing, if you do have your phone stolen straight away, you should be ringing up your phone provider and killing that SIM card, because partly of what the phone will want to do is to send a code to your message via SMS. So if it can't get through with that, then that's the safest way of doing that.
Yeah, makes sense. Which actually was going to lead us on to our next question, because we're talking about the human element here and a bit of culture. If you could talk, because obviously at Transform Finance and our event, so we're looking at financial crime, the FI financial institutions. So if you could speak to every bank customer for a minute, what's the single most or the most important behavioural change you'd ask them to make to stay safe online, or other bits of advice perhaps?
Okay, well, I mean, I would really bring in this whole zero trust policy. Zero trust effectively means you just don't trust anyone or anything. You really just go with your gut feeling or require extra verification to know who that person is, or if your bank rings you up to say that they want to do something, you just hang up and you ring the number on the back of your card. That whole zero trust will stop so many problems happening with people, because generally to get into someone's account, they might now need the actual account holder to help them with it, with a code, with some information or something. So if you don't give anything away, you've got a much better chance of being safe.
Do you think that, and maybe this is not a question for you, Jake, and maybe it's actually a question for Chris. We had Christian Hunt at yesterday's session, and I wonder how that message would impact culture development within organizations. Because, as we look at culture and developing a culture of trust, and obviously, and this is not me kind of playing devil's advocate with what you're saying. I totally agree with it. I've always been somebody that I will ask the right questions, even if it makes other people uncomfortable, because I want to make
It's
sure,
good.
if you're
Yeah.
telling me to do something, I want to know why
Yeah.
before I do it. If you tell me to jump off a cliff, I'm not going to do that until I understand, like, well, what's the necessity and what are the safety measures here? And
That's it.
I'll be honest, throughout my career, that hasn't always landed well. Sometimes it's like, I've told you to do it, so just get it done.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I need to understand why I'm doing it and what's the outcome and what's the intention to this. So I'm really interested to see how that will bring itself into the whole culture element, because we're really focusing as well on building a culture of compliance where people take ownership. But if everybody's beginning to start questioning trust, I think we need to be practical with the approach
Yeah.
here. And again, to your point, it's just about being personally responsible. And I suppose the answer is accountability. Being accountable and not just ticking boxes and clicking buttons because you just think that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I love a bit of devil's advocate. And this is what people will be thinking at the time, especially when there's a corner to cut. I find when someone is there going, well, I could jump through those hoops there just for, say, compliance sake, red tape or whatever. But if I just go through here, I can get it done quickly. And that is what people like to do. But this is about multiple layers of security. They are there to protect you, maybe your role, but essence, this is about the business. And so if we bring that right the way back to saying our own wallets, we would want to do the best we can to protect our money. We also need to make employees think that about their company. And so if you work with them, for example, I like it when companies give away a password manager to their employees at work, but also on their own personal phones for them to look after their passwords and get better hygiene in their own life. That can help with it. And when we all start to understand that there are these different layers of security, it actually becomes okay to question someone, regardless of rank, if they are higher than you, just to say, okay, we just need to go through the procedures because you're not standing in front of me. There is a screen in between us, or this is a phone line that we don't normally use. So let's go down the official route because that's what those layers are for. No one's going to get really upset with you if you're following that procedure. It probably comes into the compliance and procedures kind of thing, but that's not really my area. But if you are following those, then you are safer. And I just think if you bring it back to that zero trust, everyone should be a winner because the criminals otherwise are going to get away with it.
Super helpful and poignant advice for sure, and insights for our audience. I think we're I think we're nearing the end of our time, aren't we? I don't know whether maybe a final question from my side. We would like to finish on sort of more of a personal perspective, just looking at when you first entered into the whole area of cybersecurity, cyber resilience, etc. What's the advice you perhaps give your younger self, knowing what you know now, or indeed the new generation coming into the field of cybercrime, cyber security?
It's a great question. And I've thought about this before, and I simply don't know what I would tell myself other than definitely go with your heart. It doesn't feel like work working in the cybersecurity industry because it's so much fun. That's because I genuinely love it. And there are so many different areas in the cybersecurity industry, which makes it great for everyone. That's in my personal opinion. But if you love it, then you don't feel like you're doing any work at all.
Oh, we've lost sound, Oonagh, on you. It's all right.
Apologies, I went on mute.
It's all right.
We had that exact a very similar response yesterday, actually, from Owen at Moonpay, and he said, and I'm 100% behind it. When you're passionate about what you're doing, it doesn't feel like work. You know, you get up in the morning and you're intrinsically empowered and excited about the day ahead. And the beauty of the work that we do is every single day is changing. The typologies are changing. The sophistication is altering and modifying. And if anybody ever says to me, oh, you know, compliance, for example, compliance is boring, you know, I'm like, then you're doing it wrong. Because it is in its truest form. It is one of the fastest moving, fastest changing and exciting. And yeah, so I love that point on passion, because that's how I feel about the work that I do. I feel also as well that I serve a purpose. And you know, my father was actually as a police officer. And my mother always said to me when I was younger, you know, we all come into this world the same, we all go out the same, but it's what you do with your life that makes a difference. And if every one of us could take that on board, find what drives our passion, and then do something proactive with it to make a difference, I think that's such a beautiful concept.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, great.
Really good. Great. Okay. Was there anything else you wanted to add, Jake, before we sign off? Anything else?
It was a great chat. Thanks very much.
Brilliant.
Empowering you on a Friday.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, thank you so much, because I think the insight you've given is obviously going to make it's obviously making a big difference in the cybersecurity and obviously fraud space. And I know will be truly valuable for our audience as well. So thank you so much for the time as well. And we look forward to seeing you on the 8th of October in London.
Yeah, great. Can't wait.
Brilliant.